I wasn't supposed to be in the attic that day. Mom had always told me it was off limits. Too dusty, too dangerous, filled with boxes that hadn't been opened since before I was born. But when your mom leaves for her shift at the hospital and your phone dies and it's pouring rain outside, the attic suddenly becomes a lot more interesting. Besides, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just needed a box for my art project. That's it. I tugged the old wooden ladder down, brushing away cobwebs that stuck to my hoodie like they were alive. The attic door groaned in protest as I pulled it open, the hinges moaning like a secret begging not to be disturbed. And then I saw it. An old, beaten-up suitcase in the far corner. Not a box. A suitcase. It looked ancient. The leather cracked, the zippers rusted, one of the corners held together with duct tape. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I opened it. Inside were yellowed baby clothes, a dusty stuffed elephant, and several old photographs, the kind you print and frame, not post on Instagram. And then, tucked between two faded blankets, was a letter. It was addressed to Ava Thompson, to be read only after I'm gone. But here's the thing, no one was gone. Not yet. My mom was alive. My dad was alive. And I was very much alive too. So, why would anyone write something like that? My fingers trembled as I picked up the envelope. I held it to the light like I might see through it, like the answers were glowing inside. I knew I should have put it back. But instead, I opened it. The paper was thin, handwritten in cursive, the kind that looked beautiful but took forever to read. And the first sentence punched me in the stomach like a hammer wrapped in velvet. If you're reading this, it means you've found the truth we never wanted you to know. Your father, the man who raised you, is not your biological father. I sat back, breathless, the letter slipping from my hands like it had burned me.
What? No.
No way. That couldn't be real. I scrambled to gather the papers, skimming through them with wide eyes and a pounding heart. More sentences followed. You were born in a moment of confusion, a moment we chose to bury. It was never meant to hurt you. Please forgive us for keeping this secret. I couldn't read anymore. My chest was caving in. My vision blurred. A sob built in my throat, but didn't escape. I suddenly felt orphaned, even though nothing had changed. Or had it? My name is Ava Thompson. I'm 17. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I love painting, thunderstorms, and strawberry milkshakes from Andy's Diner. And until that day, I thought I knew who I was. Turns out, I didn't know anything. When Mom came home, I tried to act normal. She dumped her umbrella in the corner and started warming leftover lasagna in the microwave like it was just another Tuesday. But my hands were shaking as I held my fork. I kept glancing at her, this woman with warm eyes and a tired smile, the woman who used to braid my hair and kiss my forehead after nightmares. And now all I could think was, liar. Did Dad know? Was he in on it too? Was I the only one who didn't know I was living in a lie? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room staring at the letter I had stuffed into the back of my sketchbook, reading it again and again, looking for something, anything. The next morning, I skipped school. I waited until Mom left for work, then tore through the attic like a storm. I was shaking boxes, digging through bins, tearing tape with my teeth. And then, I found a photo. It was me as a baby, barely 6 months old. But what caught my breath wasn't me. It was the man holding me. He had dark hair, intense blue eyes, and a tattoo of a raven on his left wrist. I had never seen that man before in my life. And he wasn't my dad. That evening, when Dad came home, I couldn't help it. I looked at his wrists. Nothing. No tattoo. He caught me staring. What's up, Bug? I blinked. Nothing. School okay?
Yeah, totally.
But my voice cracked on the last word. He squinted at me. You sure? I nodded too quickly. Just tired. But inside, my brain was screaming. If he wasn't my real dad, who was? And why was everyone lying? Over the next week, I couldn't focus on anything. Classes blurred together. I stopped painting. I started avoiding both my parents. And every time I looked at them, I felt like I was watching actors perform roles they'd rehearsed for years. Perfect daughter. Perfect parents. Perfect lie. Saturday came. I decided to find out the truth on my own. There was only one person who might know something, someone Mom rarely talked about, someone who always looked uncomfortable around our family.
My Aunt Jody.
Mom's younger sister. She lived an hour away and worked at a tiny vintage bookstore in Durham. I hadn't seen her in months, but I remembered the way she used to look at me, like she wanted to say something but never did. I took the bus, and when I walked into her bookstore, the bell over the door jingled like something out of a movie. She looked up from the register and froze.
Ava.
Hi. She came around the counter, hugging me tighter than she ever had before. What are you doing here? She asked, searching my face. I need to talk, I said. About my real dad. Her face went pale. She didn't even ask how I knew. She just whispered, You found out, didn't you? I nodded. She locked the door behind us. We sat in the back office, surrounded by stacks of old books and the faint smell of dust and cinnamon tea. She poured us both a cup, but I didn't touch mine.
She did.
Then she sighed, and she began to talk. Ava, she said, your mom was only 19 when she met him. His name was Caleb. Caleb Morgan. The name hit me like a drumbeat in my chest. Jody continued. They were complicated. Your mom fell hard for him, but Caleb was dangerous. Unpredictable. He had this wild charm that made you forget he was broken inside. I swallowed hard. What happened? She got pregnant. He wasn't ready. Said he'd change, but he didn't. Her eyes welled with tears. He left before you were born. Said it was for your safety. And my dad now. He's the only one who ever stepped up, she said quietly. Tom married your mom knowing the truth. Loved you like his own. Raised you like his own. He is your dad, Ava, in every way that matters. But her words didn't calm me. If anything, they made it worse. Because now I had a name. Caleb Morgan. A man I'd never met. A man who gave me life. And walked away. That night, I went home and stared at myself in the mirror for hours. I touched the slope of my nose, the curve of my lips, the flecks of silver in my dark eyes. Whose face was this? Tom's? Or Caleb's? I didn't know anymore. I only knew one thing. This wasn't over. For the next few days, I lived like I was half inside a dream. At school, people joked and laughed and asked if I wanted to go to prom. I smiled, nodded, pretended like I was fine. But inside, my mind screamed a different truth. You're living in someone else's life. I stopped answering my dad's texts. I ignored Mom's questions. Every time I looked at them, I felt like I was suffocating inside a photo that someone else had painted, one where I was never supposed to be. But one thought kept pulsing through my brain, louder than any voice around me. Who is Caleb Morgan? I started with Google. There were hundreds of Caleb Morgans in the United States. Musicians, dentists, even a pastor. None looked like the man in the photo I found in the attic. So I tried something different. I scanned the back of the photo, and just barely visible in faded blue ink was a scribbled note. July 2007, Fayetteville Fairgrounds. I stared at it for hours, heart pounding. That was a 2-hour drive from Raleigh. The next day after school, I skipped dinner, told my mom I had a group project, and snuck out to the Greyhound station. I bought a one-way ticket with cash I'd saved from tutoring. I didn't know what I'd find in Fayetteville, but I had to go. The fairground was empty when I arrived, the metal rides dismantled, ticket booths covered in graffiti, and the smell of oil and dust thick in the air. But a security guard let me walk around after I lied and said I was working on a photojournalism project. I wandered until sunset, staring at every corner, every fence, every brick. And then I saw it. An old mural painted on the side of an abandoned food truck, a raven surrounded by blue roses. It matched the tattoo I'd seen in the photo. Someone had added graffiti over it, but the original paint was still visible underneath. I took a picture. Then I did something I never thought I would. I posted it on Reddit. I didn't mention names, just said I was trying to find information on someone who used to work at the fairgrounds in 2007 and might have had a tattoo of a raven. I expected nothing. Instead, I got a message within 30 minutes. Anonymous user 88. That sounds like Caleb Morgan. Used to be a mechanic for the rides. Weird dude. Kept to himself. But people remembered the Raven ink.
Why? Me.
I think he might be my biological father. Anonymous user 88. You should be careful.
Me. Why?
Anonymous user 88. Last I heard, Caleb got into some trouble. Left town fast. Rumor is he changed his name. No one's seen him since 2008. My hands went cold. I typed back. Me. Do you know where he went? Anonymous user 88. No clue. But if you're smart, you'll drop it. Some people don't want to be found. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the message. Some people don't want to be found. But I wasn't ready to stop. I couldn't. Back home, the distance between me and my parents became a canyon. One morning, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. When he saw me, he stood quickly, awkwardly, like he wanted to hug me but didn't know how. Ava, are we okay? I froze. I wanted to scream. And no, you lied to me. But instead I said, I'm fine. He nodded slowly, pain flickering in his eyes. Your mom and we just wanted to protect you. I didn't answer. He didn't push. But I saw it, that crack in his voice, that fear in his eyes, the fear of losing me. And suddenly I hated how much that hurt. At school, I couldn't focus. I started skipping classes, eating lunch alone in the art room, pretending to work on a portfolio I hadn't touched in weeks. Mrs. Beckman, my art teacher, tried to talk to me. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder one afternoon and said, You look like you're carrying something too heavy for one person. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. She didn't push. She just gave me her number and said, Any time, okay? But I couldn't talk to anyone. Because how do you tell someone, I don't know who I am anymore? One night, I got another message. From the same Reddit user. Anonymous user 88. You still looking for Caleb?
Me. Yes.
Someone told me he used to hang around Asheville. Left town after a bar fight. You might find something there.
Me.
Thank you. Asheville was 5 hours away. And I knew if I told my parents I was going, they'd never let me. So I lied. I said there was a college tour. A weekend retreat with art students. A teacher would be there. I packed a bag and left early Saturday morning before either of them woke up. I took the first bus out. Asheville was beautiful in that wild, artistic kind of way. Music on every street corner. Vendors selling jewelry and handmade soaps. People painting on sidewalks. But I wasn't there to enjoy it. I went straight to the address I'd been given, an old auto repair shop on the edge of town called Black Raven Motors. The name alone made my heart skip. I stepped inside. The man at the counter looked up. Mid-40s. Greasy hands. Pierced eyebrow. Can I help you? I hesitated. I'm looking for someone. Caleb Morgan. I think he might have worked here. The man's face went blank. Then cautious. Who's asking? I swallowed. I'm
Ava.
He might be my father. Silence. He stared at me for a long time. Then he reached under the desk and pulled out a faded employee photo, a group shot of 5 men standing in front of the garage.
There.
Second from the right. The same man from the photo, in my attic. Same blue eyes. Same raven tattoo. That's him, I whispered. The man nodded slowly. He worked here for a while. Quiet. Didn't say much. Do you know where he went? No idea, he said. But he left something behind. Said someone might come looking one day. My heartbeat exploded. He walked into the back and returned with a box. Inside were old receipts, scraps of paper, and a small leather notebook. On the first page, in sharp, neat handwriting, was a single sentence. If you're reading this, you're braver than I was. And underneath, forgive me. I took the notebook home. Read every page. Caleb had written about regret, about anger, about being too young and too selfish. He never mentioned my name, but he mentioned my mother. I couldn't be the man she needed, but I loved her. God, I loved her. And if our child ever finds this, tell her I'm sorry. I stared at that sentence for hours. Because even though it wasn't enough, it was something. A crack in the wall I'd been pounding against. A whisper through time. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. But the notebook also contained something else. A second name, scrawled again and again in the margins.
Eli.
And a phrase. If anything happens to me, Eli knows everything.
Who was Eli?
Why hadn't Caleb ever tried to reach out? And what did he mean, if anything happens to me? Suddenly, the mystery deepened. And I realized I was no longer just searching for my father. I was chasing a ghost. The name Eli echoed in my mind like a riddle I couldn't solve. I stared at the notebook, flipping pages over and over, looking for any other clue. There were addresses crossed out, scribbled dates, and fragments of sentences like, "He warned me this would happen. She'll never forgive me if she finds out. Eli says I have to leave tonight." None of it made sense. But I knew one thing. If Eli knew everything about Caleb, then Eli was the only person who might finally tell me the truth. I searched through property records, white pages, anything I could find. And eventually, I found a name. Eli Granger. He used to live in the same area as the fairgrounds in Fayetteville. Now, he was listed as a former mechanic turned recluse. No social media. No digital trail. But one P.O. box in Durham still appeared on a few legal documents. That was an hour from Raleigh. Close enough to find. I wrote a letter. I didn't know what else to do. Dear Eli, my name is Ava Whitmore. I believe you knew a man named Caleb Morgan. I recently found a notebook he left behind. He mentioned your name and said you would know everything. I think he might have been my father. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want the truth. Please. If you know anything, help me understand what happened.
Ava.
I mailed it. And then I waited. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing. And just as I started to believe I'd hit another dead end, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sentence typed in all caps. Meet me where the raven dies. My blood went cold. I read it again. And again. Was it a threat? A clue? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I barely slept. And then around 3 a.m., it hit me. The mural. The raven surrounded by blue roses. Back in Fayetteville. On the food truck. It had been vandalized, except the raven's head had a massive X spray painted over it. Where the raven dies. That had to be it. I took the risk. I didn't tell anyone. I borrowed my mom's car and left a note saying I was spending the weekend with friends. I drove to Fayetteville at dawn, parked near the fairgrounds, and walked back to the mural. It looked the same, quiet, abandoned. Except now, something was different. There was a man standing nearby. Tall, grizzled, gray beard. He wore a tattered jacket and smoked a cigarette with shaking fingers. Our eyes met. "You Ava?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He tossed the cigarette. "I'm Eli." He didn't speak much at first. We sat on an overturned crate behind the old food truck. His eyes scanned the empty fairground like he was seeing ghosts. Then finally he said, "You look like him. Same eyes." My heart ached. "I need the truth," I whispered. Eli nodded. Then he told me everything. Caleb Morgan wasn't just a runaway. He was hiding. From someone. From something. He got involved with the wrong people, Eli said. Years ago. Before you were born. Drugs? I asked. Eli shook his head. Worse. He explained that Caleb used to run with a crew that worked under-the-table jobs, some legal, some not. He never asked questions. But eventually, he discovered something he shouldn't have. Evidence that tied one of their clients to a missing person case. A teenage girl. She vanished after visiting the fairgrounds in 2006. And Caleb? He found her bracelet in the back of a ride truck. He wanted to go to the cops, Eli said, voice cracking. But they threatened him. Said if he spoke, they'd come for her. Her? I asked. Eli nodded. Your mom. My blood froze. They knew about her. About the baby. Said they'd make her disappear too if Caleb didn't shut his mouth. I stared at him.
So he left.
He ran. But he left you both behind to keep you safe. I blinked hard. So he did care. Eli looked away. He cared too much. But he was a coward about it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry. But more than anything, I wanted to know, was it real? Or just another lie? Why didn't he come back? I asked. Eli pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. This is the last letter he ever gave me. Told me not to mail it unless someone like you showed up. I opened it. And I swear, my heart shattered.
Ava.
If you're reading this, then you're old enough to ask the questions I was too afraid to answer. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to understand. I loved your mother. I loved you before I ever held you. But I couldn't protect you both and survive. So I did the only thing I knew how. I disappeared. If they ever find me, this letter might be the last thing anyone hears from me. But know this, you were never a mistake. You were my light. I hope one day you become everything I wasn't brave enough to be. I couldn't breathe. I held the letter against my chest, my throat burning. Eli put a hand on my shoulder. He's gone now. Vanished in 2008. No one's heard from him since. Some say he changed his name and lives off-grid. Some say he's dead. I looked at him. Do you think he's still alive? Eli paused. I think he loved you enough to disappear forever. That kind of love doesn't die easy. When I drove home that night, I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I replayed everything in my head, the photo, the mural, the letter, the silence. And as I pulled into our driveway, something inside me cracked. Because standing in the window, watching me, was my mom. Her eyes swollen.
Red.
Terrified. She opened the front door before I even turned the car off. Ava, she gasped. Where were you? I've been calling you. I know who he is, I said quietly. Her mouth opened, then closed. Tears welled up. Please, she whispered. Don't hate me. I stepped inside.
Closed the door behind me.
And for the first time in weeks, I looked my mother in the eyes and asked, Tell me everything. She stood there, trembling. The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Tell me everything. She backed away slowly, eyes filled with a fear I'd never seen on her face before. Not fear of me. Fear of what I might find out. Fear of what she had kept buried for 17 years. My mother sat down on the living room couch, her hands wringing the sleeve of her sweater. I followed, sitting across from her, knees bouncing, throat dry. You already know, don't you? She asked softly. I know his name was Kayla Morgan, I said. I know you lied. I know, Eli. Her face went pale. Oh God. There was a long silence. Then she began. I met Caleb when I was 20. He wasn't like anyone I'd ever known. Mysterious, reckless, funny. I knew he had secrets, but I didn't care. I was in love. She looked down at her hands. When I told him I was pregnant, something in him changed. He panicked, kept checking the windows, making late-night phone calls. He said it was bad timing, but he never explained why. I could feel my stomach twist. He was being followed, she said. He told me if anything happened, I needed to forget him. For my safety and for yours. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why make up a fake dad? A fake photo? A fake life? Tears slid down her cheeks. Because I thought he was dead. And I didn't want you to grow up with a ghost. I wanted you to feel protected, not haunted. The words hit me hard. And yet, something about them still didn't sit right. I found your journals, I said. The ones you hid in the attic. You knew he might still be alive. You were writing letters to him, hoping he'd come back. She stiffened. Those weren't for you. Why didn't you burn them? If you really wanted to forget him? Her eyes flared with a sudden heat. Because I couldn't forget him, Ava. I loved him. Even after he left. Even after the rumors. Even after I married Greg and pretended to move on. I froze. Greg? I whispered. She blinked. I mean your dad.
No.
You said Greg. The room fell completely still. She buried her face in her hands. I didn't want you to know. I didn't think it mattered anymore. I leaned forward, my voice sharp. Greg was my dad? She nodded slowly. We married when you were 2. You used to call him Daddy Greg when you were little, remember? He adopted you when you were 5. We decided not to tell you about Caleb. We thought it would be easier. I stood up. It wasn't easier. It was a lie. I didn't know what else to do, she cried. I didn't want you to hate me. I don't hate you, I whispered. I just don't know you. The confrontation fractured something in both of us. We sat in the silence, broken open. She eventually went to bed. And I stayed up, staring at the letter from Caleb again, tracing each line like a map I couldn't read. What would I do now? Should I search for him? Would finding him bring peace, or destroy what was left? My mind raced with questions, spiraling so fast that I didn't hear the knock on the door at first. Then came another. Then silence. I opened the door to find a small manila envelope lying on the porch. No one was around.
Not a sound.
I looked both ways before picking it up. Inside was a single flash drive. No note. No label. Just the cold, black plastic and the sound of my heart hammering. I plugged it into my laptop. There were only 3 files. A voice 001.mp3. Image 01.jpg. A letter finaled txt. I clicked the audio first. It was his voice. Caleb's. Older. Deeper. But undeniably his. If you're listening to this, then Eli told you. Or you found me some other way. Either way, this is the end of the story you were never meant to know. I'm sorry I left you. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. But you have to understand, if I came back, you'd both be dead by now. These people, they don't forget. They don't forgive. And they're still out there. But I made a deal. I gave them something they wanted. Evidence. Confessions. It bought me time. Enough time to disappear completely. And maybe, just maybe, enough time for you to find the truth. I pressed pause, tears welling up again. The second file was a photo, a grainy image of Caleb in what looked like a desert. He was older now. Beard longer. Eyes sadder. But still him. Behind him, a wooden shack and a rusted sign that read, "Leave no footprints." I opened the final file, letter final txt. Ava, this is the last piece of me I can give you. The people who ruined our lives are still powerful. They wear suits now, own land, influence elections. But if you're brave, if you want justice, then follow the names listed in the documents I've hidden. Start in Raleigh. Look for the yellow door. You'll find the rest. Or you can walk away and live free. Really free. Just know, whatever you choose, I love you. Caleb. I stared at the screen, my heart in my throat. It wasn't over. It couldn't be over. I printed the letter, backed up the files, and sat down at the table with a pen and notebook. I started to write down everything I knew. Every name. Every date. Every clue. Because I had to decide. Was I going to dig deeper and risk everything? Or finally close this chapter and live in peace? The next morning, my mom found me at the kitchen table. I heard the door last night, she said gently. I slid the flash drive toward her. This is everything, I said. I think he's still alive. And I think he gave us a choice. She looked at me, her eyes wide with something between fear and awe. Are you going to follow it? I didn't answer right away. I looked at the photo again. His eyes haunted me, but they also gave me hope. I think I have to, I finally said. If I don't, I'll never know who I really am. And then, just as I stood to go upstairs and get dressed, my phone buzzed. A new text. From an unknown number. It read, "Don't go to the yellow door. They know you're coming." I stared at the text. Don't go to the yellow door. They know you're coming. My hands went ice cold. I looked out the window instinctively, heart thudding, half expecting someone to be watching from across the street. But there was no one. Just the still morning, the faint chirping of birds, and the rustle of leaves in the late summer breeze. I turned back toward my mother, holding out my phone. "Read this." She took it, her eyes narrowing as she read the message. "Who would know to send this?" "I don't know. I haven't told anyone but you." A silence passed between us. It was a different kind of silence now, one that held weight, suspicion, and deep unease. I didn't want to believe it, but part of me started wondering if she had told someone. I wanted to trust her. I needed to trust her. But everything had changed so fast. Trust now felt like a dangerous luxury. "I swear I didn't tell anyone," she whispered. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe they had been watching this whole time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning the text over in my head, analyzing every word. Who are they? And how do they know so much? Even what Caleb said would be hidden. I opened the flash drive again, looking for metadata. Timestamps, locations, anything. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. In the properties of the .jpg photo, there was GPS data. A location. Not Raleigh. Not anywhere near the yellow door Caleb mentioned. But instead, a remote town in Arizona. Population, less than 1,000. I looked up the coordinates on my phone. A single road. One gas station. A tiny diner. Nothing around it for miles. Had he left the GPS in on purpose? Was this where he really was? Or was it another trap? I packed a bag and printed every document. If someone was tracking me, they'd find a bunch of false trails. I booked 2 fake Airbnb rentals in opposite states using burner accounts. Then I took a rideshare to the bus station and paid cash for a one-way ticket west. I didn't tell my mom where I was going. Not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't risk anyone else being pulled into this. The ride was long. Sleep didn't come. I kept thinking about the voice message. His words echoed in my mind. "If you're listening to this, this is the end of the story you were never meant to know." But this wasn't the end. Not yet. When I arrived in Arizona, the heat hit me like a furnace. I stepped off the bus, gripping my backpack tightly, squinting toward the desert road ahead. There was a rusted sign near the gas station, and a familiar shack in the distance. I walked for nearly 20 minutes. Every step felt like a countdown. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I knocked. No one answered. But the door creaked open. The room smelled of dust and old wood. Papers were scattered across the table. On the wall, a corkboard full of photographs, maps, and string-connecting pins like a conspiracy web. And then I saw him, sitting at the back of the room, in a tattered chair, holding a glass of water. He was older, hair streaked with gray, a beard, tired eyes. But he stood when he saw me. "Ava," he asked. My breath caught in my throat. "Dad." We didn't speak at first. We just stared. Then I cried. He hugged me, and the world cracked open. Later, after I'd calmed down, he poured me tea. We sat in silence again, absorbing the weight of our reunion. "I never thought I'd see you," he said quietly. "I never thought you were real." He gave a bitter smile. "I barely am anymore."
He told me everything.
The people he'd worked for, the betrayal, the threats,
The bribes.
how he'd staged his own death, how he left to keep us alive. He'd been a whistleblower, but the people he tried to expose were untouchable. Instead, they buried him, and he let it happen. But why now? I asked. Why leave the flash drive? Why make it possible for me to find you? Because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. And because I knew you'd come. You were always like me, curious.
Brave.
Too brave, maybe. We talked for hours. He showed me files. Photos of men in suits, one of whom I recognized from a recent political ad. Secret meetings. Fund transfers. Blackmail schemes. And then he handed me a locked case. Inside were documents. Real ones. Signed testimonies. Video evidence. A letter addressed to the Department of Justice, never sent. This is everything they tried to hide. But if I take this, won't they come for me? He looked me dead in the eyes. Yes. But if I don't, then it stays buried forever. That night, I slept in the shack, and I dreamed of fire. The next morning, I left him behind. He said he'd move again, he had to. He couldn't risk being found. We hugged one last time. I love you, I whispered. I loved you every day, he said. Even when you didn't know who I was. Back home, I sat in front of my laptop. I'd scanned everything. I had the entire truth now in my hands. I could leak it anonymously, or hand it to the media,
Or send it to the FBI.
but I'd be watched,
Tracked.
maybe targeted. I hesitated. Then I hit send. For days, nothing happened. Then suddenly headlines. Whistleblower documents leak, implicate national figures. Explosive files suggest decades-long cover-up. FBI opens investigation into alleged shadow group. It was everywhere. I didn't sleep for 48 hours. I kept my phone off. I stayed out of sight. But I was alive. I'd done it. I'd exposed them. And just when I thought it was over, another envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a single photo. A woman. Late 20s. Blonde. Sharp features. Behind her, me. Taken from across the street. And a note. She's watching. She remembers you. You think it's over. It's not. I swallowed the fear. This time I wasn't going to run. Because I knew who I was now. I wasn't a girl raised on lies. I was the daughter of a survivor. A truth teller. A fighter. And whatever came next, I'd be ready.